If your life isn't quite where you want it to be at the moment, believe me, you have the power to change its course in just a few months, up to a point that you might think is unimaginable right now. And in today's video, I'll share the exact path that I followed to accomplish this. Consider this your express way to fitness, reduced anxiety, and fulfillment. And first, we have to start with the problem. And the first thing that you need to know is that the reason you find yourself repeating the same behaviors, engaging with the same people, and doing the same thing is majorly due to your environment. When your surroundings condition you to act in an unhealthy way repeatedly, it becomes the norm. More than that, if you deviate from these behaviors, you become the outlier, the one that doesn't fit in. That's why the pivotal first step is to change your environment so you're not dictated by it anymore. 5 years ago, I started this very process, and at the time, I was in an environment that just wasn't right for me. I couldn't lie to myself anymore, and it was like, I can feel it, but I don't really want to admit it because it will mean that I'm the one that has to change it. One thing for sure though, betting on your environment to change first is not even foolish. So if you're watching this video, I presume you're aware of the inadequacy of your environment and you're wondering how to make the change. Now there's level to this, like a scale. The more aggressive you go, the more change you will create and the more potential growth in the least amount of time there is. The first level is micro. You can switch your micro environment. This will be your immediate surroundings. For instance, if your current group of friends has a single-minded focus on drinking and smoking, or maybe you're stuck in a work environment and every Monday you're looking for an escape. Changing your environment equals finding a new group of friends or applying for another job. And it will be the best way to provoke an immediate change. Now talking about the micro, this is the next level up and what most people consider when they think about changing their environments. Typically, this means relocating to a new city or a new state. You leave your friends behind, school, job, everything for a fresh start. Typical example of that, you quit your consulting job in Baltimore to drive across the country and become a personal trainer in California. It is transformative because it liberates you from others' perception and their preconceived notions about you and your story. Because in a new territory, no one knows your past. You're the only keeper of your story and you get to express it freely. Last level is you change the game. This is the ultimate level. Not only do you leave everything behind, but you have to start from scratch and learn everything a second time again. That's the path I chose, and I switched countries, landing in Canada at 17. This shift is incredibly stimulating for your brain, fostering immense learning potential. However, it's also the most anxiety-provoking and radical option you have. This path is for those who are seeking not only a fresh start, but a completely new world, eager to leave the old one behind them. So this is the first step to reinventing yourself. You start by selecting your new environment. Begin by looking at your dreams and narrow it down with what's possible and realistic to pinpoint the ideal setting for your journey. Now, I know this is scary, but you cannot accept important change if you don't expose yourself to completely new situations. Once you have a clear idea about where you want to go and how you want to change your environment, you can move on to the next step. Secondly, this shift in your environment was crucial because we want to disrupt your conditioned behaviors. And when I talk about this, I'm referring to the unhealthy habits you're determined to get rid of, like drinking, smoking, consuming a lot of junk food, the lack of physical activity. Because the thing is that it's almost impossible to change behavior when it's anchored into your environment. That being said, it's way easier to shift a behavior that goes against the rule of the new surroundings. And trust me, whatever it is, you'll have the opportunity to change it. Because when you arrive in a fresh environment, you slowly realize that you can be whoever you want to be. This is why this whole process has to start with altering your environment. Consider smoking, for example. If you're always surrounded by smokers, quitting is kind of out of the question. Because even if you do, you'll be surrounded by the smokers. Your current environment bombards you with smoking cues all over the place, constantly triggering your cravings. Now imagine that we put yourself in a non-smoking environment where smokers are absent. Then quitting could become achievable in a matter of days. Yes, it will still be challenging, but the constant environmental triggers, they will be absent. And to break the old patterns, you have two strategies at your disposal. First one is cold turkey, meaning that you deliberately force yourself to stop engaging in the pattern. And it's especially effective for harmful habits that you urgently need to get rid of, like smoking or overeating, for example. The upside of this is that there is rapid elimination of the behavior in as little as few days. For smoking, it takes about 3 days for your body to flush out all the nicotine and overcome the most intense cravings. The downside, though, is that it's mentally taxing and it creates significant frictions internally. But I have a framework to help you with that, though. Think about how much time you've been consistently engaging in the pattern you're trying to break. It's normal it feels impossible right now because you're telling your brain that the pattern you've been following over and over the last few months or even years sometimes, you're going to stop right now and never going to engage back. Your brain is telling you that it's impossible because he truly thinks that you need to engage in this pattern in order to survive. But never forget that at any time you're the one giving orders. And if you want to stop, you can. Also, about this friction that it might cause, this can be overwhelming and lead you to quit. In the case of smoking, it will be frustration that people will feel when they don't have what their body tells them that they need, which is nicotine. So just be aware of that because there's no way around it. But if you'd rather get rid of something quickly and you can endure a little bit of frustration, this method is by far the most efficient way to do it. And then you have the second option, which is progressive deload. Opt for this method if the issue with the habit is its frequency rather than the behavior and the nature of it itself. Take social media, for example. The nature of social media isn't inherently bad. Well, let's just say that it's not inherently harmful, okay? But spending 4 hours on it daily, that's what is. The good thing with this approach is that you decrease slowly the frequency and the duration of the thing that you're consuming. And this approach is obviously softer than the first version. But the downside that it takes more time and I'd say more patience and maybe even more discipline because you need to constantly apply effort, which depending on your personal traits may or may not be harder for you. And so here you have your step 2, which is identifying all the behaviors that you aim to eliminate. Choose the appropriate strategy for each based on your resilience to frustration. Outline your plan, detailing it on paper with specific deadlines and limits. You do this one pattern at a time, and if you switch your environment, following the step 1, you're setting yourself up for success. In fact, the very decision to switch environment might naturally lead you to abandon some of these habits. To create new habits that are healthy, here's how to do it step by step. So the habit creation looks like this. No habit, planning, forcing, encoding, solidification, crystallization. First, you need to begin with one habit and one only habit at a time to avoid overwhelming your daily routine. Prioritize the habit that you most want to integrate into your lifestyle. For example, if your goal is to start taking care of your health, your habit is going to be to go to the gym 4 times a week. And the phase of planning involves scheduling those gym sessions into your weekly calendar. Then you move on to step 2, which is forcing. This stage is about bringing the habit into existence from zero presence in your routine, which will certainly create the most friction. That's why it's called forcing, because you physically have to force yourself to engage in the behavior because it's not part of any of your habits. It's not even a pattern at this point. It's your first days or week, and at this point in time, your brain hasn't picked up on the fact that you're going to make this thing something permanent and it's going to fight the change. There is encoding. That's when your brain starts to catch up on the fact that you might be serious about this thing and the initial resistance begins to wear off. Now the main challenge becomes simply to start the activity, but the friction to activation is greatly reduced. Solidification, here consistency is the key because you're aiming for that sweet spot where you have to gently push yourself to go to the gym, enough that you feel a sense of pride after completing your session, but not so much that it takes you all your energy and it feels like a huge effort. And the last stage is crystallization. So the habit has become an integral part of your daily routine to the point where skipping it feels like something's missing. That's when you know it's anchored into your daily life. For instance, after 5 years of consistently going to the gym, I just find it empty to go a week without it because it's no longer a struggle. It's just part of my day and I'm genuinely enjoying it and I look forward to it every single day. 5 to 6 days a week though. Don't overdo it. Step 3 is then build one habit at a time and go through all the different phases to make it work. Don't try to skip the steps and don't try to implement 3 habits at a time or you'll get lost very quickly. That being said, once your habit is crystallized, you can work on stacking them up. So this whole time we've been basically planning out your identity shift. And while we focused a lot on behaviors, that's just the surface level, okay? The core of this journey is about transforming your identity. It's basically the essence of who you are and the driving force behind your action, thoughts, emotions, morals, value, everything. The fascinating part is that once your identity shifts, your actions, they naturally align with this new identity. However, if this sounds easy on paper, there's a reason why most people will almost never change and why they keep repeating the same patterns until they die, even when unhealthy. Because change equals twisting, modifying your identity to adapt your reality. And your brain hates that. In fact, in order to do that, remember friction, you will have to wrestle against your brain's usual way of functioning. This resistance is crystallizing your natural instincts, part of which is designed to avoid change as it might lead to loss or destruction. That's why you can change your identity just like that. Your system just wouldn't let you. But there's a way around this. If you change the right action with precision, over time, your identity erodes and it becomes more flexible. Most important thing to understand is that your actions are directed by the rule of congruence, meaning that your actions, they must align with your thoughts, moral, and your value. When there's a difference, like take lying for an example, it creates discomfort and friction because your actions are not in sync with your values. And that's how you change identity. You purposefully push yourself to produce actions that are coherent with the person that you aim to be. And at the same time, you force yourself to not engage in the unhealthy habits that you want to get rid of. This is the key to truly altering your life. And as you sculpt this new identity, everything shifts from your mindset, your interest, your relationship, aspiration, goals, and even your perception of time. You essentially evolve into this new person, fully aware though of your history and who you are. That's very important because this whole process is a transformation. But for that to happen, you have to start by honestly asking yourself who you want to be and plan your way ahead. So ask yourself, what does the ideal version of yourself do? List the habits, the way this person behaves socially, the way you present yourself, visualize everything in details and put it on paper so it becomes reality. Once you have this information, then it's time to start the plan and to change your environment, break the old patterns, and forging the new habits. This blueprint doesn't cost you any money. You don't need people. You can start right now. The only crucial thing is self-honesty, obviously, a clear vision of your goals, and a commitment to this new identity. Once you start the process, trust me, there's no going back. And the only thing that you'd wished is that you started this earlier. More than that, the journey promises to take you beyond your current expectations. But be prepared though to challenge your existing beliefs, actions, and to fight against self-inflicted friction in order to create the space necessary for reinvention. My own transformation began when I moved to Canada. From that point, I learned a new language, changed my beliefs, put on 20 pounds of muscles, got a degree. And all of that emerged from one simple decision that I made. A decision that's waiting for you, and you just have to make it and choose to stick to the path. Now, fitness fundamentals for those who want to start the gym with every tools that they need in order to do so is out, and it's the first link in the description. Also, if you want to know more about change, consider watching the last video. As always, I hope this helps. Just trust the process.